Hello, welcome back to the channel and welcome to the Volvo EX30, which is a Chinese-built compact electric crossover. You never hear of those these days, do you? It's quite small, it's like 4.2, 4.3 metres long. It is 1.84 metres wide, excuse my cheat sheet, it is 1.55 metres high. It has, in this form, there's two battery sizes. You can get a 49 kilowatt hour battery size, or as this is, which has got a 64 kilowatt hour battery size. The smaller battery version is only available with a single motor. This one you can have with this battery size, you can either have with 270 horsepower or with this form 422 brake horsepower, which means the back motor has 268 brake, the front motor has 154 brake. The battery is all underneath, as you would expect. You charge it from back here, which is a good place. You can charge it at up to 175 kilowatts. But you know what EVs are like, that's very much a peak. It probably will not hold it, especially as you get towards the top end. It definitely will not hold it. Do you want to have a quick look inside? These are the back seats. This is me getting behind my driving position. I am 5'10", that is 176 centimetres, I think, in new money. I've got a reasonable amount, that much headroom. I've got that much knee room. It's not that generous, but this is quite a small car. Let's also have a look. I'll tell you what, actually, we'll have a look in the boot. It's got some of our stuff in it, so we'll pan away right now to an empty version. But the boot will hold, in this form with all the seats up and the thingy-bobbity in place, it will hold about 315 litres. That can rise up to 900 litres by the time you've got all the seats folded and the luggage cover out of the way. Prices start at £33,795 on the road in the UK for the base version, rising to the very top spec, which I think this is, to £44,495. Lots to tell you on the touchscreen front. So this is the inside. It's clean, isn't it? It is clean and crisp and light and airy. And Volvo likes that because it's got that Scandi cool design thing going on, which I get, fine, fair enough. What it doesn't have a lot of is any actual real buttons. There are some here for the windows. That's the front windows. Now, if I want to open the rear windows, I have to push that little button first, which then allows me to do the back windows. I don't have separate front and rear window switches. If I want to unlock it and lock it, there is a sort of haptic button and there is a proper button up there for the hazards. But otherwise, I've got stalks, steering wheel, and everything is on this. So, let me run you through the touchscreen first. Up the top here, what you get is some of the driving functions. So I know I'm in P, that will show me the speedometer 2. If I have cruise control activated, it will show up there. It shows what gear I'm in, it shows my battery level and distance remaining, and it shows me sort of trip stuff plus the current efficiency. The central section is given over at the moment for navigation, but it can be given over to other things. So if I push the settings button, that kind of falls into the middle, so on and so forth. I'll come to the settings in a minute. I'm a little bit warm in here, but there's nowhere to just instantly change it. If I want to change the temperature, I have to push that and then go into there. If I want to put a heated seat on, well, I do into that. I mean, that's fine while I'm stationary chatting to you. While I'm driving, it's not quite so straightforward, and because it has an eye monitor, because in 2024 that is a EU standard piece of legislation that it monitors how much I'm concentrating on the road, how much I'm not concentrating on the road, and it pings up and tells me if I'm not. Well, guess what? As you may see when we come for a drive in a minute, the more stuff I'm doing on here, the less I am looking at the road, so the more it tells me I'm not looking at the road. And it gets... I'm sorry, this is a Volvo who puts safety and environmental things and conscientiousness first and foremost. They limit all their cars to 112 miles an hour, and then yet if you want to change the temperature, you have to go 2 buttons into a touchscreen. I'm sorry, that is not good enough. We will see that when we go for a drive in a minute, but I just want to make it abundantly clear that is not acceptable. This stuff down here doesn't move. That is fixed all the time, so it's got some apps on that. This is sort of like, they call it the app menu, so it pulls up a menu here. It includes a glove box button, which even when we're stationary, I've managed to not hit twice before hitting it. Just give it a flipping handle. It's not that hard, is it? While I'm on it, there's a separate glove box button up there, by the way. So there's two different ways of opening it. If I want to adjust the mirrors, I have to go into this and then move it on the steering wheel. Now, if you've been driving for a bit and you shuffle around in your seat, as you might well do, you just move around just to get a bit more comfortable, and your mirrors are not in the right place. The idea that you have to go into a separate screen to do that and push these buttons, and only then, once you're there, do you get the idea that you can feel for them. It's not good. It's not good enough. It is not acceptable to make a car like that, and it really winds me up. It really winds me up. Manufacturers are starting to back out of this, and Volvo are not doing, and it's not on. Anyway, I can turn off speed limit warnings like that. There is a one-pedal drive mode, which I can do with this. If you want to turn off the eye monitor, and you probably will, you have to then go into settings, then go into, no, don't go into controls, go into driving. Oh, I'm going to need the assistance of Jack behind the camera here. Was it in there, mate, or was it somewhere else?
I genuinely can't remember.
What was it in controls? Was it in driving? Was it in controls? Side mirrors, sensitivity. I mean, you'll find out which of these is in, because you will want to turn it off a lot. What else? There was one more that was really going to wind me up about it. There was one more thing at these. Fog light. Thank you, Jack. Yeah, that was in... Was that in driving?
No, it's in like the main bit. You go to the car.
So you go to car...
And lights in the top left.
Oh, there we go. Lights in the top left. Then rear fog light on. Well, you know what? If it's foggy out and I'm driving, do you really want me to go into two touchscreens before I can turn on the exterior fog lights? That is just so beyond acceptable. I don't know where to begin. It's... Insert beeps. Appalling. On the steering wheel, the left-hand side stuff does some driver profile things, driver mode stuff, and the things on the right do the media and volume controls. And that is an overview of the cabin. There's quite a lot of storage, actually. There's a charge pad here. There's storage underneath. There's a little bin underneath the centre console, which is pretty good. And there's quite a big storage cubby in the centre, which has a lid as well, and two USB-Cs. And two decent-sized door pockets. And also, of course, there are cup holders. And there are two, and you can swivel those backwards and forwards if you don't want to use them all. That stuff is very good. I mean, like the way that swings out and swings back in. I like that. Anyway, enough about the interior. Let's take that EX30 for a drive. Okay, and so, to some of my frustrations aside, let's concentrate on what this car is like to drive. Well, it's an EV, so it's got one reduction gear, so it's very smooth. There is the one pedal drive mode, which means it doesn't creep from rest like an old school automatic would do. If you turn off one pedal drive, it will. You just, when you take your foot off brake and throttle, you just touch the throttle once, it will just creep slowly along at sort of just under walking pace. One pedal drive obviously comes to a standstill. This is the performance four-wheel drive version, but in its regular drive mode, which is what I am in at the moment, it is rear-wheel drive, and it only pitches in when it starts to lose traction, and it thinks you need the four-wheel drive mode, and that makes it a more efficient car when it's in this mode. I can manually select into four-wheel drive mode, and I'll do that in a minute. But let's first of all concentrate on what it's like to drive now. And the answer is very smooth. This is a smooth road. There were a couple of bumpy roads earlier when I thought the ride was a little bit unsettled here and there, but it's largely okay. This car is obviously a bit taller than a not crossover, but as is the way with most EVs, you know, the battery is set low, so it has a low centre of gravity, so it doesn't necessarily have to roll a great deal. An engineer did once explain it to me, saying that when EVs were first a thing, engineers looked at their curb weight. This car is like 1,800 kilos. They thought, well, that'll need severe anti-roll bars to tie it down, and obviously the thicker the anti-roll bar, the more severe the anti-roll bar. Effectively, the less independent suspension is from one side to the other. So in some early EVs, when you got a bump on one side, the anti-roll bar was transferring a bump to the other side as well, so they kind of rocked down the road like this. When they worked out that actually, because the centre of gravity is so low, you don't necessarily need anti-roll bars to prevent roll, because the centre of roll and centre of gravity is low. They could slacken off the anti-roll bars, and EVs are much more smooth as a result today. It was explained to me. Sorry, that was a rather convoluted way of saying most EVs these days ride pretty well. This one's all right. It's quite short, it's quite wide, but it was fine. It was fine. So there are 3 weighting options on the steering. You can have it light, medium, or firm. This is in its lightest mode at the moment, and it's very slick. It's quite accurate. It doesn't get any feel or anything like that, but it's fine. There's about 2.6 turns between locks, and the turning circles are reasonably tight, so it's reasonably quick. But it's very stable. It's tuned for ease of use, and that is absolutely fine. That is what this thing is all tuned for, really. Because it's relatively short, relatively tall-ish, you do get a little bit of lean as you crack on into corners, and then just as you sort of come out, you get back on the power. Obviously, you get a very quick response because it's electric, and you can just feel it just sort of, I'm well within the realms of grip and stability and safety and visibility. But just as you get back on the power, it just umps you forwards with a sort of rear bias to the handling to just sort of straighten it on the way out of a bend. Not unpleasantly, in fact, not unpleasantly at all. Now, if I may, let's go to settings. Oh no, that's turned off settings. Let's go to settings and then the next settings mode, and then into driving. And then I get, so my steering feel is on soft. Let's go to that. Let's go up to firm. And then if I stick it on performance all-wheel drive, and then it prioritises performance over range. And what that means is that the front motor is always engaged rather than only coming in later. So when you go into a corner and you come out the other side, you get more acceleration more quickly because that motor is helping. So I think the difference between the 0 to 62 mile an hour time, it's like 3.4 seconds or something like that, which is mad. I mean, this is a family compact crossover that costs 40 grand. What is it doing going from 0 to 62 in 3.5 seconds, which is the sort of speed that a Ferrari F40 could have only dreamt about? I mean, it's bonkers. The Smart #1, the Smart 1, the Brabus version of that, also goes ludicrously quickly from 0 to 60 and has a dreadful chassis at coping with it. Yeah, so that's steering, that's ride quality. Brake pedal feel is alright, pretty good. It's fine. I can't tell the difference when it's going from regen into discs, but there will be a moment where you exceed the limit of the regenerative braking and you're into the mechanical discs for braking. Let's turn off performance all-wheel drive. I wonder if it's actually a bit more fun without it, because you get a more natural rear-wheel drive bias to it. And actually, I wonder if, that being the case, the slightly lesser version, probably not the really base version with a small battery, but the long-range version, which has just got one motor at the back, the same amount of power as this, actually might have the nicest balance of them all. I kind of think that about the Porsche Taycan, that really long-range one they do, which has only got the rear motor and the big battery, still does 0 to 60 in like 6 seconds or something. So it's a quick enough sports saloon hatch. I think it's a saloon, isn't it? But it's got a really nice rear drive balance. I suspect maybe the halfway EX30 might be the pick of the range in terms of driving fun. So after I'd driven this four-wheel drive EX30, I had a go in a single motor long range one, and it was great. I mean, really enjoyable to drive. Same interior, obviously, but the car is lighter, there's no steering corruption, it's got a really great balance, terrific body control, and nice rear-wheel drive adjustability. For me, it's the pick of the range, no question, and it does 0 to 60 in like 5.5 seconds, which is plenty to be getting on with. Really good fun. But are you buying a 30-something £1,000 electric crossover to get driving fun? Well, no, maybe not. But it's nice the fact that you can get it. And actually, given some of my frustrations around the rest of this car, I am pleased to find that it is relatively enjoyable to drive. How do you sum up a car like this? Because it's a good-looking interior. I would rather be on that motorcycle. I really like these vents. They're really funky, really cool. It's light, it's airy, it has that Scandi cool thing going on. I mean, there's lots to like about that. There's an awful lot to like about that. But it doesn't have to come, or it shouldn't have to come, in the way of practicality, usability, and most importantly, safety and ease of use. And I think it does. And I think it genuinely compromises safety on the road. And I have a massive problem with that. And we have to separate slightly Volvo's decisions from legislative requirements. So the eye monitoring, which goes off too much, there are legislative requirements that say when a driver's eyes go to that for more than 3.5 seconds above 20 kph, you have to ping it up on there to get them back. The driver can turn off that system if they want, but you have to fit, Volvo has to fit that to this car. So I have to slightly separate out the fact that it has to fit some of these systems which are annoying and don't work properly, but might not be Volvo's fault that they don't work properly. The legislation requires that ones that don't suit daily driving work properly. That's a problem with EU legislation. That's not a problem necessarily for Volvo, although there will be different ways that manufacturers implement it. I drove a Hyundai Kona the other day. I think it was broken, because if its driver attention system was working properly, that makes the car unrecommendable. But anyway, I digress. So there's that stuff. Let's park that, because Volvo has to fit that, even though it's, even though it can be annoying. And what it doesn't have to do is put the glove box. So there's now no glove box opening thing in front of me. There's no glove box. If I want to open the glove box, I now have to push that button, and then at the third attempt, that button to get my sunglasses out of the glove box. It doesn't have to put the heated seats in a menu. I don't know if you can see how long I'm looking away from the road for, but it doesn't have to do that, but it chooses to. It doesn't have to put the switches for the mirrors in there. It doesn't have to put the rear door window switch that I have to push a separate button before I reenact it again. So now I've turned up the heated seat too much when I was just talking to you then. That's what I have to do to turn it down, all the while looking away from the road in front of me. It doesn't have to do that. It shouldn't do it. I wish it wouldn't do it. How much that annoys you compared to how much that annoys me can vary. I would not buy this car on the basis of those features. If you do, and you don't mind them, if you never want to change your mirrors while you're driving along, so that doesn't bother you, fair enough. This is quite a nice, quite a practical, quite a decent ranged, quite a decent value, very nicely finished electric EV crossover. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Join me again. We've got a few videos going up at the moment which are quite good fun. I think there's a big Unimog documentary which may already be out, Britain's Best Driver's Car, in which we investigate the nicest cars to drive that have been launched in the past 12 months. There are 2 vids of those. At the moment, they're going up around the same time as I know this is. One maybe before, one maybe after, but I recommend them to you. You can find all we do in the magazine, which is available print, as it has been every week since 1895, and also digitally, because you can sign up to a digital archive, which includes all of those magazines, 128 years worth of magazines. As I talk to you, there is an offer which means you can get 13 weeks access, which is a new magazine every week, plus the entire back catalogue, for less than 30 quid. And honestly, it's like a new hobby. Having 130 years worth of magazines to read through, just stuff about cars. It's so cool. It's so searchable. It's really good. If you go to themagazineshop.com, you'll be able to find it all there. Meantime, honestly, thanks very much. We'd love an up thumb and a subscribe and all that malarkey. See you next time.